Alexander Graham Bell is my great-great-grandfather. Being a descendant of Alexander Graham Bell, I was aware of the work he did.
And a lot of times we would do some research, and the more we learned about Mabel, the more we wanted to learn about her parents, Gertrude and Gardner Hubbard. They are the precursory auditory verbal parents. She lost her hearing from scarlet fever, and she was completely deaf, and there were no hearing aids. What her parents and her siblings did for her, it's essentially following the principles of auditory verbal practice, because it kept her with spoken language.
We are both certified auditory verbal therapists. We've been practicing auditory verbal therapy for 40 years. I was at Tufts in Boston, and this was 1976, which is the centennial year of the invention of the telephone in Boston.
There was a presentation where Dan Ling was going to speak.
In the field of working with children who are deaf and hard of hearing, he was just a master.
So we went and met Dr. Daniel Ling.
And he said, she's in grad school getting her degree in speech pathology. You need to come to my graduate program, learn how to be a teacher of children who are deaf and hard of hearing. And there we obviously worked really closely with the Lings and really got involved professionally in working with children who are deaf and hard of hearing.
Through Jim's program at McGill, we met Helen Beebe. She was really doing the therapy, putting the theory into action that the Lings were talking about.
And we were fortunate that she was willing to hire the two of us.
This was a very small clinic, but people from all over the world came. And so they'd come and stay for a whole week. And that was my job, to watch Beebe every day and take what she did and help the family bring it into their life. And it was just fabulous training for both of us. We were just fortunate to be trained by these giants in the field, and a lot of times I'll say, this is exactly what I learned from Beebe, or Ling taught us how to do this.
Dr. Ling was a professional who ran a teacher training program at McGill to train teachers how to use hearing and listening skills to teach spoken language to hearing impaired children. Helen Beebe was also doing that as a practitioner, but not a professor.
And we've got to talk about Judy Simser.
We would go to Ottawa and actually work with Judy in her practice at the Children's Hospital in Eastern Ontario. There were other therapists like Doreen Pollock in Denver, who was also working at the same time. And these professionals were working in similar ways based on using aided residual hearing to teach spoken language skills. They each called it a little bit different term, and it wasn't until the birth of Auditory Verbal International that we all got together and decided to use one term for what we were doing, and that's where auditory verbal therapy came from. AVI created a certification process for auditory verbal therapists. That certification process then morphed back into A.G. Bell and is now how the listening and spoken language professionals are certified.
The Academy.
We moved back to Massachusetts, and I was hired to start a program, an auditory verbal program in the Gloucester Public School System, which I did in 1980 and ran until 2013. Knock, knock. We've been working in other countries. We worked for a year in Australia. We've also done some work in Doha, Qatar. We worked in Vietnam with the Global Foundation for Children with Hearing Loss. Part of our training is to understand the interface between technology and children and their parents.
Our job has gotten easier because technology has improved, but it's the same principles. Looking at what the baby hears and making sure the baby is processing and responding to sound in a natural way, the way another baby does.
Well, A.G. Bell has always been the hub of activity for not just families, but also professionals in this field that are working toward teaching spoken language skills.
It's so vital that we know the latest information, and trying to ask these families to teach their children to listen through hearing aids and then eventually this new thing called the cochlear implant, we were just on this crest of a wave of change. Research now is showing it's all about the brain. And things that Bibi and even Mabel's parents knew early on was to keep those brain cells active, to keep those areas of the brain stimulated. And when you use your whole brain, like all the systems, the auditory and the visual and all of the systems, it works better.
This is a fabulous time for families who happen to have children who are deaf and hard of hearing, because the access to technology, the access to professionals that can provide auditory verbal therapy has created a fertile environment for kids to grow up using spoken language. But it takes parents who are willing to be part of the picture and professionals who are willing to engage the parents and make sure that the parents are the primary teachers for their children in this incredible field.